The Eye of Agamotto had shown Dr. Stephen Strange many things in his years as Sorcerer Supreme. Dimensional incursions, temporal paradoxes, entities that existed between heartbeats and thoughts. But it had never shown him this, a galaxy-wide temporal distortion so massive it threatened the stability of the entire multiverse. "Wong," Strange said, floating in the lotus position above the Sanctum Sanctorum's main chamber, his hands weaving intricate patterns as golden runes materialized around him. "I'm detecting a reality distortion that spans approximately 400 billion star systems across a single galaxy. The temporal manipulation extends back at least 30 years and forward into multiple branching timelines." "That's impossible," Wong said from below, consulting the ancient texts. Even with the Time Stone, creating that scale of distortion would require power equivalent to an entire cosmic force governing life and death across trillions of beings, Strange finished. His eyes, one enhanced by the Vishanti's gifts, focused on the distortion with inhuman precision. "It's not coming from our dimension. It's parallel, adjacent, a universe where something called the Force acts as both energy field and destiny engine, and someone has been corrupting it systematically for decades." "Should we investigate?" Wong asked, already knowing the answer. The Sorcerer Supreme's mandate is to protect our reality from mystical threats, Strange said, descending to ground level. "But this distortion is bleeding through dimensional barriers. If it continues unchecked, it could create cascade failures across the multiverse. We investigate." He opened the Eye of Agamotto, and the Time Stone blazed with emerald light. The vision that flooded his consciousness was staggering in its scope. A galaxy at war, a mystical order of warrior monks corrupted from within, a political leader who was secretly an ancient evil, and at the center of it all, one young man whose choice would determine the fate of trillions. "I see you," Strange whispered, his consciousness following the temporal threads to their source. 14 million futures, and in almost all of them, you fall. The Jedi Order dies. Democracy becomes tyranny, and the corruption spreads like cancer through the Force itself, until it reaches dimensional boundaries where magic and science meet. "Strange." Wong's voice sounded distant. "What do you see?" "Tragedy," Strange said, "unless I intervene. Wong, I need you to maintain the Sanctum's protections while I'm gone. If I'm not back in 72 hours by Earth time." "How long will you be gone by their time?" Wong interrupted. "Unknown. The temporal differential between dimensions is unpredictable. Could be days, could be years." Strange began weaving a portal, but not the usual kind. This one pulsed with the Time Stone's power, boring through dimensional barriers that weren't meant to be crossed. "If I don't return, tell the masters of the mystic arts that the multiversal threat was contained, or that it consumed me. Either way, someone needs to know what I tried to do." "Strange," Wong started, but Dr. Strange had already stepped through the portal, leaving reality behind. The Jedi High Council was in session, debating the latest reports from the Outer Rim sieges, when reality tore open in the center of their chamber. A portal of golden light. Not hyperspace, not force-generated, but something else entirely, materialized above the holographic star map. Jedi Masters ignited lightsabers instantly, combat reflexes honed by 2 years of war responding to the impossible intrusion. Through the portal stepped a man in blue robes with a red cloak that seemed to defy gravity, his hands glowing with geometric patterns of golden light. The most striking feature was the amulet around his neck, a circular artifact that pulsed with energy that made every force sensitive in the room feel deeply, profoundly uncomfortable. "Greetings," the man said, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone accustomed to speaking with cosmic entities. "I am Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, Master of the Mystic Arts, defender of my reality against supernatural threats, and your galaxy is dying from a cancer you can't see." The portal snapped shut behind him. Strange lowered his hands, the golden light fading, and surveyed the Jedi Council with eyes that seemed to perceive far more than they should. "Impossible," Mace Windu said, his lightsaber still ignited. "No ship brought you. You appeared from nowhere. The Force itself cannot." "I didn't use the Force," Strange interrupted. "I used magic, a different cosmic power system that operates on principles your Force doesn't acknowledge. Where I come from, we call it the Mystic Arts, the manipulation of dimensional energy, temporal flow, and reality's underlying architecture. Your Force is interesting, pervasive, but not omnipotent." Yoda's eyes narrowed, his centuries of experience recognizing something unprecedented. "Strong in the Force, you are not. Yet power you possess. Power unlike anything sensed before. Explain, you must." Strange gestured, and suddenly the entire council chamber was transformed. They stood now in what appeared to be a mirrored dimension. The same room, but reflected, rotated, impossible. Yet they were still present, still physical, just existing in a space that shouldn't exist. "The mirror dimension," Strange explained, walking on walls that had become floors. "A pocket reality layered beneath your own. Sorcerers use it for training, containment, and observation. Your Force can't directly affect it, because it's not part of your universe's fundamental structure. It's an adjacent dimension I've pulled you into. Welcome to the first demonstration that your Force isn't the only cosmic power in existence." He snapped his fingers, and they were back in the normal council chamber. But every Jedi present now understood. They'd just experienced something their millennia of Force training hadn't prepared them for. "Who are you?" Obi-Wan Kenobi asked, his strategic mind already cataloging threats and opportunities. "And why have you come to Coruscant during a war council?" "I told you, I'm Stephen Strange, Earth's Sorcerer Supreme. I came because your timeline is cascading toward catastrophe, and that catastrophe is creating multiversal instability." Strange opened the eye of Agamotto, and the Time Stone's glow filled the chamber. "This is the Time Stone, one of 6 Infinity Stones from my reality, artifacts of cosmic power predating the universe itself. It allows me to see through time, to manipulate temporal flow, to perceive possible futures. And when I looked at your galaxy, I saw this." He gestured with both hands, and suddenly every Jedi in the council was experiencing a vision, not through the Force, but through Strange's magic. They saw futures, Order 66, clone troopers turning on their Jedi commanders, the temple burning, younglings murdered, Anakin Skywalker in black armor, breathing mechanically, serving a Sith emperor, democracy replaced by tyranny, the Jedi Order reduced to myth, and in every timeline, nearly every variation, the same thing, absolute catastrophe. The vision ended. Several council members were breathing hard, some with tears in their eyes. Yoda's ears drooped with the weight of what he'd seen. "A possible future, that was?" Yoda asked quietly. "Or destiny?" "Probability," Strange corrected. "I've examined 14,605 possible timelines stemming from this moment." In 14,300,000 of them, your order falls. The Republic becomes the Galactic Empire, and the Sith, yes, I know about the Sith, achieve victory that lasts for generations. Your force itself is corrupted, twisted, used as a tool of oppression rather than balance. 14 million futures, Mace Windu repeated, his voice hollow. And we lose in almost all of them? Yes, Strange said bluntly, because you're blind to the real threat. You think you're fighting a war against the Separatists. You think Count Dooku and General Grievous are your enemies. But the true enemy is already inside your walls, wearing the face of an ally, corrupting the Force itself through dark side manipulation that spans decades. Speak plainly, Sorcerer, Ki-Adi-Mundi demanded. If you have knowledge of threats to the Republic. Chancellor Palpatine is a Sith Lord, Strange said. The Sith Master you've been searching for, Darth Sidious. He's orchestrated this entire war, both sides, to destroy the Jedi Order and establish himself as a galactic dictator. And he's weeks, maybe days, from executing his final plan, something called Order 66. The silence was absolute. Then Mace Windu spoke, his voice carefully controlled. That is an extraordinary accusation. Chancellor Palpatine has been a steadfast ally to the Jedi Order for 13 years, Strange interrupted, since he became Chancellor. The same 13 years during which the dark side's influence on Coruscant has grown exponentially. Tell me, Master Windu, can you sense the Sith Lord's presence on this planet? Because I can. My magic isn't clouded by the Force. I can see exactly where the corruption originates. He pointed toward the Senate building. There, in the Chancellor's office, a dark side presence, so powerful it's warping reality itself, creating the temporal distortion that pulled me across dimensions. Clouded by the dark side, the Force has become. Yoda admitted slowly. See clearly, we cannot. But accuse the Supreme Chancellor of treason, without proof. Destroy the Republic, that would. Then let me get you proof, Strange said. He opened a portal, golden light forming a circle in the air. Through it, the Council could see Palpatine's office, empty at this late hour. I can scry any location in this galaxy using dimensional magic. Your Force might be clouded, but magic sees clearly. Give me 72 hours. I'll find evidence even a skeptical Senate can't ignore. This is highly irregular, Obi-Wan said, but his tone suggested interest rather than rejection. We can't simply spy on the Chancellor based on the word of an, forgive me, an extra-dimensional sorcerer we've just met. Can't you? Strange asked. Your order is dying, Master Kenobi. I've seen it. The clones are programmed to kill you. Your generals are walking into traps, and the man orchestrating it all sits in the highest office of your republic, protected by political power and your own disbelief. I'm offering you a chance to prevent the catastrophe, or you can wait for the future I showed you to arrive. The council members exchanged glances, silent communication flowing through the Force. A proposal I have, Yoda said finally. Join us, Stephen Strange will. As consultant in matters beyond the Force, investigate he may, but alone he will not act. Evidence he must bring to the Council. Only then, decide we will. Agreed, Strange said, though I should warn you, I've never been good at following orders. In my universe, I'm used to making the hard calls myself. Saving the world usually doesn't wait for committee approval. Then you'll find the Jedi Order refreshingly bureaucratic, Obi-Wan said, with dry humor. Welcome to the Clone Wars, Dr. Strange. Try not to break reality while you're here. Strange was given quarters in the Jedi Temple, a sparse room that felt more like a monk's cell than a living space. He immediately began setting up mystical defenses, weaving wards that would alert him to force-based intrusion or dark side influence. Fascinating, Strange muttered as he worked, his hands tracing golden geometric patterns in the air. The Force permeates everything here. It's like trying to perform surgery in a room where the patient's nervous system is exposed and touching all the equipment. No wonder the Jedi can't see the Sith corruption. It's everywhere, woven into the very fabric of this reality. A knock at his door. Strange didn't turn, but his cloak of levitation shifted defensively. "Come in, Anakin Skywalker," Strange said. "I've been expecting you." The door opened, revealing a young man with sandy hair, a mechanical right hand, and eyes that carried far too much burden for someone barely past 20. Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, the Jedi who would become Darth Vader in 14 million futures. "How did you know it was me?" Anakin asked. "The Time Stone shows me possibilities," Strange said, finally turning to face him. "In almost every future, you're critical to what happens next. You're at a crossroads, Anakin. The choices you make in the coming days will echo across generations." "Master Yoda said the same thing," Anakin said, entering the room but keeping his distance. "He also said you're not Force-sensitive, that your power comes from somewhere else." "Magic," Strange confirmed. "The mystic arts. Where I come from, we study dimensional energy, time manipulation, reality alteration. It's not so different from your Force in principle. Both are cosmic powers that can be used for good or evil. But the execution is very different. Force users sense and flow with the Force. Sorcerers command and shape magic through will and study. The Jedi say attachment leads to suffering," Anakin said, and Strange heard the hunger in his voice, "that we must let go of everything we fear to lose. Do your mystic arts teach the same?" Ah, Strange thought. Here's the question that matters. The reason Anakin sought me out. "No," Strange said honestly. "The mystic arts teach that great power requires great responsibility, and sometimes that responsibility demands sacrifice. But we don't forbid attachment. We acknowledge that love can be both strength and weakness. The question isn't whether you love someone, it's what you're willing to do for that love. How far you'll go, what principles you'll compromise." Anakin's expression was hungry, almost desperate. "The Jedi Council won't let me become a master. They don't trust me. They put me on the Council but deny me the rank. And I have fears, nightmares. Someone I love is in danger, and the Jedi tell me to just let go, to accept loss. But I can't. I won't." Strange felt the moment crystallize. This was it, the fulcrum point. Anakin Skywalker standing at the crossroads between light and dark, looking for someone to tell him his fear was valid. "Padme Amidala," Strange said quietly. "Your wife. She's pregnant, twins, and you've been having visions of her dying in childbirth." Anakin's hand went to his lightsaber. "How do you—" "The Time Stone," Strange said, gesturing to the Eye of Agamotto. "I've seen your possible futures, Anakin, all of them, and yes, in many timelines, Padme dies, but not from natural causes. She dies because of choices you make, because you turn to the dark side, seeking power to save her, and in doing so, you become the thing that destroys her." "That's not true," Anakin said, but his voice shook. "I would never—" "You would," Strange interrupted, his voice hard. "I've seen it. You make a deal with Palpatine. He offers you the power to save her through the dark side, through Sith knowledge. You betray the Jedi, help him execute Order 66, murder children in the Temple, and Padme, horrified by what you've become, loses the will to live even as she gives birth to your children. You kill her with your choices, Anakin, not with your hands, with your fear. Anakin's face was pale, his breathing rapid. Why are you telling me this? Because unlike the Jedi Council, I believe in informed choice, Strange said. They want you to simply trust in the Force, to let go of your fear without understanding why. But I'm a doctor. I was a neurosurgeon before I became a sorcerer, and I learned that patients make better decisions when they understand their options. So here are your options, Anakin Skywalker. Strange waved his hand, and golden projections appeared in the air, images pulled from the Time Stone's visions. Option 1, you continue on your current path. Palpatine, who is Darth Sidious, manipulates your fear. You fall to the dark side, become Darth Vader, and spend decades serving an empire you help create. Padme dies. Your children grow up separated, and you don't find redemption until your son nearly dies, saving you 30 years from now. Anakin stared at the image of Vader, the black armor, the mechanical breathing, the aura of absolute menace. Option 2. You resist Palpatine's manipulation. You stay true to the light. But Padme still dies because you never learned the healing techniques that could save her. You survive broken, blamed by the Jedi for not foreseeing the danger, and spend your life regretting that you didn't do more. Another image, Anakin, older, weathered, standing alone at a grave. Option 3. You listen to what I'm about to teach you. The mystic arts include healing magic far beyond what the Force offers. I can show you techniques to save Padme, not through the dark side, not through Sith corruption, but through medical magic refined over millennia by the masters of the mystic arts. You save your wife, keep your children, and remain a Jedi. But you have to trust me, and you have to resist Palpatine when he makes his offer. The third image showed Anakin, Padme, and 2 children, happy, alive, together. I can see the future, Anakin whispered. Which one is real? All of them, Strange said, and none of them. The future isn't fixed, Anakin. It's probability. Every choice creates new branches, new possibilities. Right now, you're at the junction where all timelines converge. What you choose next determines which future becomes real. Why should I trust you? Anakin asked. You appear out of nowhere, claim to be from another dimension. Tell me the Chancellor is a Sith Lord. Why should I believe any of it? Strange could have used magic to prove his point. Could have shown more visions, performed more demonstrations. But he'd learned from treating patients that sometimes the most powerful tool was simple honesty. Because in 14 million futures, I saw you fall, Strange said. I saw you become a monster. I saw you kill people you loved, destroy everything you believed in, and spend decades drowning in regret. And in the handful of futures where you don't fall, I'm there, teaching you, guiding you, showing you that fear doesn't have to become hate, and love doesn't have to become possession. I came to this galaxy because the temporal distortion you're creating threatens the multiverse itself. But I'm staying because you, Anakin Skywalker, deserve the chance to choose a better path. Anakin was silent for a long moment, his internal conflict visible even to someone who couldn't sense the Force. Teach me, he finally said. Not the dark side, not Sith secrets. Just show me how to save her, please. I will, Strange promised, starting tomorrow. But tonight you need to understand something crucial. Palpatine will offer you the same thing I'm offering. Power to save Padme. The difference is that his power comes with a price you don't understand until it's too late. My power comes with the price paid up front: hard work, study, and the discipline to use it wisely. Are you willing to pay that price?" "Yes," Anakin said without hesitation. "Good," Strange said. "Then get some rest. Tomorrow your training in the mystic arts begins. And Anakin, don't tell Palpatine about this conversation. In fact, I'd advise avoiding him entirely for the next few days. Can you do that? The Chancellor has been requesting my presence frequently," Anakin admitted. "But yes, I can make excuses." After Anakin left, Strange stood at his window, looking out over Coruscant's endless cityscape. Somewhere in that urban sprawl, Palpatine was planning his final moves. Somewhere, clone troopers carried chips that would turn them into murderers. Somewhere, the Force itself groaned under the weight of corruption that had taken decades to establish. 14,605 possible futures, Strange said to himself, and I've just changed the odds of 300,000 of them by having one conversation. Let's hope that's enough. He opened the eye of Agamotto, letting the Time Stone's power flow through him, and began the delicate work of tracking Palpatine's movements through temporal echoes. The Sith Lord had been careful, had covered his tracks well, but Darth Sidious had never faced a master of the mystic arts, and Dr. Strange had 20 years of experience finding things people wanted to stay hidden. The game had begun. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Over the following week, Dr. Strange became the most controversial figure in the Jedi Temple since Count Dooku's fall to the dark side. Half the Council viewed him as a gift from the Force itself, a perspective unburdened by decades of failed tradition. The other half saw him as a dangerous wild card whose magic bordered on dark side manipulation. Strange didn't particularly care about either opinion. He was too busy working. His investigation of Palpatine proceeded on multiple fronts simultaneously, a tactical approach honed through years of defending reality from supernatural threats. While his physical body attended council briefings and trained Anakin in basic mystical principles, his astral form roamed freely through Coruscant, invisible to Force users and security systems alike. The beauty of astral projection, Strange explained to Obi-Wan during one of their increasingly frequent philosophical debates, is that I'm not technically present. No body to detect, no physical presence to sense through the Force. I'm consciousness without form, observation without interaction, the perfect spy. That seems ethically questionable, Obi-Wan said, though his tone suggested interest rather than judgment. We Jedi can project our consciousness through the Force, but we maintain ethical boundaries about such surveillance. And that's why you're losing, Strange said bluntly. They stood in one of the temple's meditation gardens, surrounded by carefully cultivated tranquility that felt almost obscene, given the galaxy's state. Your enemy has no such boundaries. Palpatine has been manipulating, spying, and corrupting for decades. You've been following rules he wrote specifically to keep you compliant. Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully. Master Yoda would say that maintaining our principles in the face of evil is what separates us from our enemies. Master Yoda is wrong, Strange said. I respect him. Truly, he's one of the wisest beings I've encountered. But wisdom without adaptation is just inflexible dogma. You can maintain principles while acknowledging that sometimes the rules need to bend. That's what makes a Sorcerer Supreme different from a regular sorcerer. The willingness to make hard calls when the universe's survival is at stake. "And you've made such calls?" Obi-Wan asked. "I let 14 million people die to save half the universe." Strange said quietly, his expression distant. "I used the time stone to view 14 million futures, found the one where we won against Thanos, and guided events toward that outcome. It required sacrifice, suffering, death, but the alternative was universal extinction. So yes, Master Kenobi, I've made the hard calls, and I'll make them again if necessary." Before Obi-Wan could respond, Strange's expression shifted. The subtle change that indicated his astral form had discovered something. "He's moving," Strange said. "Palpatine. He's just received a coded transmission from someone in the Outer Rim, Count Dooku. I need to scry that communication before the trail goes cold. Excuse me." Strange's eyes rolled back, pupils vanishing beneath white as his consciousness split. His physical body remained in the garden, held upright by the cloak of levitation, while his astral form raced across Coruscant at the speed of thought. Obi-Wan watched this display with fascination and no small amount of concern. The Jedi had Force ghosts, consciousness persisting after death. But Strange was something else. He was alive and dead simultaneously, present and absent, physical and ethereal. "Unnatural," Obi-Wan muttered, then reconsidering, or perhaps simply different. In the astral plane, Strange's consciousness materialized in Palpatine's office, just as the Chancellor was ending his holographic communication with Count Dooku. To astral sight, Palpatine wasn't the grandfatherly politician the galaxy knew. He was a nexus of dark side corruption, a wound in the Force so profound it hurt to perceive. "The Jedi have brought in an outsider," Dooku was saying, his holographic form flickering. "This Dr. Strange. He concerns me, Master. His power operates outside the Force. I cannot predict his movements or counter his techniques." "Nor can I," Palpatine admitted, and Strange heard genuine concern in the Sith Lord's voice. "He represents a variable I did not account for. My visions of the future show nothing of him. It's as if he exists in a blind spot in the Force itself." "Then perhaps we should eliminate him," Dooku suggested. "A targeted assassination." "No," Palpatine interrupted sharply. "He's already suspicious. Moving against him directly would confirm those suspicions to the Jedi Council. No, we proceed with the plan, but we accelerate the timeline. Is Grievous ready to strike at Coruscant?" "He awaits your command, Master." "Excellent. Execute the attack in 3 days. The chaos will provide perfect cover for the final stage. And Dooku," Palpatine's expression hardened, "be prepared. Once Skywalker has turned, I'll have no further need for you." Strange saw Dooku's hologram flicker with surprise and hurt before the transmission ended. The Sith apprentice hadn't realized he was always meant to be sacrificed. Typical Sith arrogance. Dooku thought himself indispensable when he was merely useful, but the important information was the timeline. 3 days until Grievous's attack. Which meant Palpatine was planning to execute Order 66 shortly thereafter, using the confusion of battle to mask the Jedi genocide. Strange was preparing to return to his body when he felt it. A disturbance in the astral plane. Something ancient and malevolent had noticed his presence. Palpatine's head turned, and despite having no physical form for the Sith Lord to see, Strange felt those yellowed eyes lock onto his astral form with predatory precision. "You," Palpatine hissed, and dark side energy erupted through the room. "I can sense you, Sorcerer. Watching? Spying? Did you think yourself invisible? The dark side sees all, knows all, and now it knows you." Strange didn't waste time on banter. He pulled his consciousness back toward his body with the speed of thought. But Palpatine was faster. Dark side energy lashed out, trying to trap Strange's astral form, to pin it in place long enough for the Sith Lord to do permanent damage. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, Dr. Strange felt genuine danger. He wove defensive spells as he retreated, the shields of the Seraphim forming around his astral body, golden light clashing against purple-black dark side corruption. The two cosmic powers collided, and reality itself screamed at the contact. Strange tumbled back into his physical body with jarring force, gasping for breath. The cloak of levitation wrapped around him protectively, while the Eye of Agamotto blazed with defensive magic. Obi-Wan was at his side, instantly, lightsaber drawn. What happened? I felt a massive disturbance in the Force. Palpatine detected me, Strange said, his hands shaking slightly from the exertion of fighting off a Sith Lord's attack while in astral form. He's more powerful than I anticipated, and he's accelerating his plans. Grievous attacks coruscant in 3 days. Order 66 follows shortly after. 3 days, Obi-Wan repeated, his expression grim. Then we need to inform the Council immediately. Prepare our defenses. Perhaps evacuate the younglings. No, Strange interrupted. Think, Master Kenobi. If we fortify the temple, Palpatine knows we're suspicious. He'll change tactics, and I'll lose my ability to predict his moves. We need to appear ignorant while preparing countermeasures he can't detect. You're asking us to use our younglings as bait, Obi-Wan said, and there was steel in his voice. I'm asking you to trust that I won't let them be harmed. Strange corrected. I can place mystical wards around the temple that will prevent Order 66 from executing. The clones will physically be unable to harm Jedi within my protective boundaries. But Palpatine can't know those wards exist until it's too late. And if your magic fails, Obi-Wan challenged, then 14 million futures were wrong about me being here. Strange said, Master Kenobi, I understand your distrust. I'm asking you to stake everything on powers you don't understand, wielded by someone you've known for barely a week. But consider this, in every future where I don't intervene, your order dies. Every single one. The only timelines where Jedi survive are the ones where you trust me. So the question isn't whether you trust my magic, it's whether you trust the Force itself, which brought me here to save you. Obi-Wan was silent for a long moment, his hand still on his lightsaber hilt. Then, slowly, he deactivated the blade. I'll speak to Master Yoda, he said, but if he agrees, we'll follow your lead. But Dr. Strange, if you're wrong, if this is some elaborate dark side, deception and children die because we trusted you, then you can kill me yourself, Strange said simply. I'll stand still and let you, because if I fail to protect those children, I don't deserve to live. That's the burden of being Sorcerer Supreme. You don't get to fail, not when innocent lives are at stake. The meeting of the Inner Council, Yoda, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, and Ki-Adi-Mundi took place in a shielded chamber Strange had warded with every protective spell he knew. Even Palpatine's dark side surveillance couldn't penetrate the mystical barriers. Troubling this news is, Yoda said after Strange reported his findings. 3 days, you say? Accelerating, the Dark Lord's plans are. Because of my presence, Strange confirmed. I'm a variable he can't control or predict, so he's forcing the issue, hoping to execute his plan before I can fully counter it. Which means we have a narrow window to act. Then we should arrest the Chancellor immediately, Mace Windu said. Bring him before the Senate, expose his crimes. With what evidence? Strange asked. I witnessed a holographic conversation while in astral form. That's not admissible in any court, and politically, Moving against Palpatine without ironclad proof would destroy the Republic's stability. Half the Senate worships him. They'd call it a Jedi coup, and your order would be branded traitors before Palpatine even went to trial. Then what do you propose? Ki-Adi-Mundi asked. Strange opened the eye of Agamotsu, and the Time Stone's glow filled the chamber. I propose we let Palpatine think his plan is working. Let Grievous attack. Let Palpatine believe he's about to execute Order 66 and destroy the Jedi. But at the critical moment, I intervene with magic he can't anticipate or counter. We expose him during his moment of supposed triumph, when his true nature is undeniable, even to his political allies. Risky, that is, Yoda observed. Many things could go wrong. All plans are risky, Strange said, but I've analyzed the probabilities. This approach gives us a 73% chance of success, far higher than any alternative, and it allows me to implement the real solution to your problem. Which is? Mace asked. Strange waved his hand, and holographic images appeared, not force-generated, but purely magical constructs, showing detailed schematics of clone biology. The inhibitor chips, Strange said, organic control devices implanted in every clone trooper's brain. They're programmed to execute Order 66 when Palpatine gives the command, a directive to kill all Jedi as traitors to the Republic. I discovered them through astral reconnaissance of Kamino's cloning facilities. The chips are active, just waiting for activation. The council members stared at the schematics with horror. Our clone soldiers, Obi-Wan said slowly. Men we've fought beside for years. They're programmed to murder us? Not by choice, Strange clarified. The chips override their free will. The clones themselves are innocent. They're slaves to programming they didn't choose and can't resist, which is why my solution doesn't harm them. He zoomed in on a chip schematic. I can use dimensional magic to create a field that disrupts the chip's functionality without damaging the clones' brains. When Palpatine gives the order, the chips will try to activate and fail. The clones remain free-willed, and the Jedi remain alive. And you can do this for every clone in the Grand Army? Ki-Adi-Mundi asked skeptically. That's millions of soldiers across the entire galaxy. No, Strange admitted. My power has limits, but I don't need to cover every clone, just the ones on Coruscant and in this sector. The majority of Jedi are here for the Temple defense. If we can save the Temple and the Council, the Order survives even if scattered Jedi across the galaxy fall. It's brutal calculus, but it's the best option available. Sacrifice you propose? Yoda said quietly. Jedi in the Outer Rim, abandon them, you would, to save the Temple. To save the future, Strange corrected. I've seen timelines where we try to save everyone and lose everything. The Sorcerer Supreme's burden is making choices based on what's possible, not what's ideal. I would save every Jedi if I could, but I can't. So I save who I can and accept the weight of those I couldn't. The silence was heavy. These were Jedi, warriors who'd spent their lives protecting others, who'd taken vows to defend the innocent and weak. The idea of abandoning their own people to save themselves violated every principle they held sacred. There is another way, Mace Windu said finally. We could warn the scattered Jedi, recall them to Coruscant before Grievous attacks, consolidate our forces, and alert Palpatine that we know his plan. Strange said. He'd execute Order 66 immediately, before I had time to prepare countermeasures. More Jedi would die, not fewer. Then we are trapped, Obi-Wan said bitterly. We either sacrifice our outer forces or risk total extinction. Welcome to the burden of command, Strange said without sympathy. Every leader faces these choices. The only question is whether you have the strength to make them. Yoda's eyes closed, his ancient face lined with pain. For 900 years, he'd led the Jedi Order, through peace and war, triumph and tragedy. But this moment, choosing which of his people would live and which would die, this was a darkness beyond anything he'd faced. "Master Yoda?" Obi-Wan prompted gently. "Agree, I do," Yoda said finally, and his voice carried the weight of centuries. "Dr. Strange's plan, we will follow. But Stephen..." The use of Strange's first name was deliberate. "Promise me. The younglings, the Padawans, those who cannot defend themselves, protect them you must. Whatever else happens, save the innocent." "I swear it," Strange said, and power rippled through his words, a sorcerer's oath, binding on levels these Jedi couldn't perceive. "The children will be protected, on my life, on my power, on everything I am. No youngling dies while I draw breath." "Then we have an accord," Mace Windu said. "The Jedi Order places its fate in the hands of a sorcerer from another dimension. May the Force be with us all. And may my magic be enough," Strange added quietly. The next 3 days were the most intensive preparation Strange had ever undertaken, and he'd once spent 3 weeks in the mirror dimension mastering time loops to defeat Dormammu. He wove wards around the Jedi Temple, using techniques drawn from a dozen mystical traditions. The crimson bands of Sidorak, forming an invisible lattice through the temple's architecture. The shields of the Seraphim anchored at key structural points, and most importantly, a dimensional disruption field keyed specifically to the clone's inhibitor chips. "Explain it again," Anakin said, watching Strange work. The young Jedi had become Strange's most dedicated student, absorbing mystical principles with the same fierce intensity he brought to lightsaber combat. "Magic is will made manifest," Strange said, his hands weaving golden patterns in the air. "But will requires structure, symbols, gestures, incantations. These provide the framework that allows cosmic energy to take shape in reality. What I'm creating here is a layered defense. The outer ward detects hostile intent. The middle ward disrupts technological control systems. The inner ward creates a pocket dimension where physical violence against Jedi is literally impossible." "Like the mirror dimension you showed the Council?" Anakin asked. "Similar principle, different application. Instead of pulling people into an alternate reality, I'm overlaying an alternate reality on this location. Think of it as reality armor. When the clones try to shoot Jedi, the bullets will exist in a space where Jedi don't, and vice versa. The physical mechanics are complex, but the result is simple: protection." Anakin watched the golden light solidify into invisible barriers. "Could you teach me this to create wards, to protect people?" "Eventually," Strange said. "But first you need to master the basics, which brings us to your other concern, Padme." At the mention of his wife, Anakin's entire demeanor shifted. "You said you could teach me to save her, that there were healing techniques." "And I will," Strange interrupted. "But Anakin, you need to understand something crucial. Healing magic isn't about power, it's about precision. I was a neurosurgeon before I became a sorcerer. I spent years learning to operate on the human brain with microscopic accuracy, because one wrong move could kill or permanently damage my patients. The mystic arts healing techniques require the same precision. You're learning to reshape reality at the cellular level. If you make a mistake, you don't just fail to heal. You could make things catastrophically worse." "Then teach me," Anakin said with desperate intensity. "I'll learn, I'll practice, I'll do whatever it takes. Just show me how to save her." Strange studied the young Jedi carefully. This was the pivot point, the moment where Anakin's path diverged from Vader's. In the timelines Strange had viewed, Palpatine exploited Anakin's fear by promising easy power with hidden costs. Strange was offering the opposite, hard-earned knowledge with upfront costs. "I'll teach you," Strange said. "Starting now, but we're running out of time. Grievous attacks tomorrow. I need to finish these wards tonight, which means your first lesson happens while I work. Pay attention." He gestured, and mystical symbols appeared in the air, complex mathematical formulas describing the relationship between consciousness, biology, and dimensional energy. Healing magic operates on 3 principles, Strange explained while simultaneously weaving ward patterns. First, understanding. You must comprehend exactly what you're healing, every cell, every system, every process. Second, precision. Your magical manipulation must be perfect. No approximations, no guesswork. Third, cost. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. Healing requires energy from somewhere. Either you provide it from your own life force, or you draw it from the environment. Choose wrong, and you either kill yourself or the patient. Anakin absorbed the information with visible hunger, his eyes tracking the symbols as Strange manipulated them. "Padme's visions," Anakin said. "The ones where she dies in childbirth. You said I caused them by falling to the dark side. But in the visions, I'm trying to save her. How does that make sense?" "Because dark side power is corrupted," Strange said. "It promises control but delivers chaos. Yes, the dark side could theoretically save Padme, but at costs you don't understand until it's too late. The dark side requires sacrifice of others, corruption of self, and ultimately leads to the exact tragedy you're trying to prevent. It's a trap, Anakin. Palpatine knows this. He's using your fear to lead you into it." "And your magic is different?" Anakin challenged. "My magic is transparent," Strange said. "I'm telling you up front. Learning to heal Padme will require months of study, perfect execution, and personal risk to yourself. There are no shortcuts, no easy answers. But at the end of that process, you'll have genuine power that doesn't corrupt you. That's the difference between mysticism and the dark side. One empowers you to make better choices, the other robs you of choice entirely." "Months," Anakin repeated, "but Grievous attacks tomorrow. Order 66 comes after that. How do I know there will even be months?" "You don't," Strange admitted. "That's called faith, Anakin. Faith that I'll protect the temple. Faith that we'll survive. Faith that tomorrow exists at all. And yes, I understand that's hard for someone who's lost as much as you have. But faith isn't about certainty. It's about choosing to hope, even when hope seems foolish." Anakin was quiet for a long moment, conflict visible in his expression. Then, "Teach me. Whatever time we have, whatever you can show me, I'll learn. For Padme, for our children." "Our children?" Strange asked, with a slight smile. "You know it's twins, then?" "The Force showed me," Anakin said. "Or maybe I just hoped hard enough. Either way, yes, I know. A boy and a girl. Luke and Leia." "Good names," Strange said, and didn't mention that he'd seen timelines where those children grew up separated, where Luke redeemed Vader and Leia led the rebellion. They'll be lucky to have a father who chose to learn rather than take shortcuts. They worked through the night, Strange laying wards while simultaneously instructing Anakin in mystical principles, the young Jedi absorbing knowledge with desperate intensity. By dawn, the temple was as protected as Strange could make it given the time constraints, and Anakin Skywalker had taken his first steps on a path that didn't lead to darkness. Outside, separatist forces gathered in the unknown regions, preparing for the assault on Coruscant. Palpatine sat in his office, sensing the approaching culmination of decades of planning. And throughout the Jedi Temple, masters and younglings went about their duties, unaware that they stood at the crossroads of history. "Tomorrow everything changes," Strange said, looking out over Coruscant's endless cityscape as the sun rose. "For better or worse, we'll know if I've changed enough timelines to matter." "You have," Anakin said with conviction. "I feel it. The Force is clearer than it's been in months, like a fog is lifting. Or like we're about to face the storm beneath the fog," Strange said. "Get some rest, Anakin. Tomorrow we either save the galaxy or watch it burn." "No pressure," Anakin said with dark humor. "Exactly," Strange agreed. "Just another day for a Jedi and a sorcerer trying to prevent the apocalypse." They separated, Anakin to check on Padme, Strange to meditate and center himself for what was coming. In his quarters, Strange opened the Eye of Agamotto one final time, checking the probabilities. 14,605 possible futures. Thanks to his interventions over the past week, the survival rate had improved. 427,000 timelines now led to Jedi survival. Better odds, but still only a 3% chance of success. "Good thing I've beaten worse odds," Strange said to himself. "Time to see if magic can trump destiny one more time." The Eye of Agamotto closed. The time stone's glow faded, and across Coruscant, in the Chancellor's office, Palpatine smiled as his holographic display showed Grievous's fleet entering hyperspace. The endgame had begun. General Grievous's assault on Coruscant began at dawn, with the kind of military precision that had earned the cyborg general his fearsome reputation. His fleet emerged from hyperspace directly above the Republic capital, bypassing outer defenses through routes only someone with inside intelligence could have known. Someone like Chancellor Palpatine. Dr. Strange stood on the Jedi Temple's highest observation platform, the cloak of levitation billowing around him despite the lack of wind, and watched the sky burn. His enhanced perception, honed through years of perceiving threats across dimensions, cataloged the attack vectors, ship classifications, and tactical objectives with clinical precision. "They're not trying to conquer Coruscant," Strange said to Mace Windu, who stood beside him with lightsaber already ignited. "This is a distraction. Grievous wants chaos, not victory. He's drawing Jedi away from the temple, spreading your forces thin across the planet. Then we don't take the bait," Mace said. "We fortify here, protect the temple." "No," Strange interrupted. "That's what Palpatine expects. If you don't respond to civilian casualties, he'll brand the Jedi as cowards who abandoned the people they swore to protect. It'll turn public opinion against you, making Order 66 easier to execute politically. You need to respond, but carefully. Minimum deployment. Keep your strongest masters here." Mace studied Strange with measuring eyes. "You've thought through this very thoroughly. Tell me, Doctor, if you can see the future with that stone of yours, why not simply tell us the optimal strategy? Why the cryptic guidance?" "Because the time stone doesn't show me a script to follow," Strange said. "It shows me probabilities. 14 million possible futures, remember. Every choice creates new branches, new outcomes. If I try to micromanage every decision, I risk creating tunnel vision, missing threats I didn't anticipate because I was too focused on avoiding the ones I did. Better to give general guidance and adapt as events unfold." "That's remarkably humble for someone with the power to see the future," Mace observed. "I learned humility the hard way," Strange said, his expression distant. I once believed my surgical skills made me infallible. Then a car crash destroyed my hands, my career, my entire identity. The mystic arts taught me that power without humility is just arrogance, waiting to fail catastrophically. So yes, Master Windu, I'm humble, because the alternative killed the man I used to be. Their conversation was interrupted by Obi-Wan's voice, crackling over comms. Masters, Grievous has been spotted in the Senate building. He's attempting to kidnap the Chancellor. Of course he is, Strange muttered. The theatrical abduction that makes Palpatine look like a victim rather than orchestrator. Master Windu sends someone to rescue the Chancellor, preferably Anakin. Palpatine will want him close for the final manipulation. You're asking me to knowingly send Anakin into Palpatine's clutches? Mace asked incredulously. I'm asking you to trust that I've prepared Anakin for exactly this moment, Strange said. Over the past week, I've taught him enough mystical principles to recognize dark side manipulation when he sees it. More importantly, I've shown him alternative paths to the power Palpatine will offer. When the Chancellor makes his play, Anakin will have the knowledge to refuse. And if he doesn't, Mace challenged, then I'll handle it personally, Strange said. But we're running out of time. Grievous's attack is Phase 1, the kidnapping's Phase 2. Phase 3 is Palpatine revealing himself and executing Order 66. We need to be ready. Mace made the decision with the kind of command authority that had kept him alive through decades of combat. Obi-Wan, take Anakin and rescue the Chancellor. Everyone else, defensive positions around the temple. Master Yoda, please ensure the younglings are in the secured areas Dr. Strange has warded. Already moving them, I am. Yoda's voice responded. Trust in the Force, we must. And in Dr. Strange's magic. Rarely thought I'd hear ya say that. Mace said dryly. Rare times require rare alliances, Yoda replied. Strange watched through the eye of Agamotto as events unfolded across Coruscant. His consciousness split between multiple viewing angles. A trick he'd mastered while studying the Darkhold, allowing him to observe Anakin and Obi-Wan's rescue mission, Grievous's theatrics, and most importantly, Palpatine's subtle manipulations. The Chancellor played his role perfectly, allowed himself to be captured, feigned helplessness while Anakin and Obi-Wan fought through droid forces, and when they finally reached him, Palpatine's performance was Oscar-worthy, grateful, relieved, the perfect victim of separatist aggression. But Strange saw what others couldn't. Through the Time Stone's perception, he witnessed the dark side energy pulsing from Palpatine, saw the subtle Force manipulations pushing Anakin toward darkness, felt the web of corruption that had taken decades to weave tightening around the Chosen One. Not this time, Strange whispered, and began his own counter-manipulation. He wove a spell across dimensional barriers, the spell of preservation, taught to him by the Ancient One herself. It didn't control minds or force choices. Instead, it clarified perception, stripped away supernatural influences, and allowed the target to see reality without interference. When the spell touched Anakin, Strange saw the young Jedi stumble slightly. Through the Time Stone, Strange watched Anakin's perception shift. Suddenly, he could see the dark side energy radiating from Palpatine, could sense the manipulation attempts, could recognize the subtle Force suggestions that had been nudging him toward darkness for years. Anakin's hand went to his lightsaber, his eyes widening with horrified realization. "Chancellor?" Anakin said slowly. "What are you?" Palpatine's expression flickered. A microsecond of frustration before the mask reasserted itself. "Anakin, what are you talking about? The battle. We need to escape." "I can see it," Anakin said, and his voice was steady despite the shock. "The darkness around you. The dark side corruption. You're the Sith Lord. Dr. Strange was right. You're Darth Sidious." Obi-Wan's lightsaber ignited instantly. "Is this true?" The moment stretched. Palpatine could have continued denying, could have used Force persuasion to muddy their perceptions. But Strange had forced his hand. The sorcerer's magic had stripped away the deception, and Palpatine knew it. "Clever," Palpatine said, and his voice had changed. No longer grandfatherly and concerned. Now it was cold, ancient, powerful. The sorcerer's interference. I should have killed him immediately when he arrived. But no matter. It changes nothing. Dark side lightning erupted from Palpatine's hands. Obi-Wan's lightsaber caught most of it, but the sheer power forced him backward. Anakin moved to defend his master, but Palpatine wasn't aiming to kill. He was creating chaos. The Senate building shook. Windows exploded, and Palpatine, surrounded by dark side energy, prepared to make his escape. Strange felt the shift in probability. This was the divergence point, the moment where timelines split. He could see the futures branching, ones where Palpatine escaped and executed Order 66 remotely, ones where Anakin fell trying to stop him, ones where the entire building collapsed, killing everyone inside. "Time to intervene directly," Strange said. He gestured, and a portal of golden light opened beside him. He stepped through and emerged in the Senate building, directly between Palpatine and his escape route. "Going somewhere, Chancellor?" Strange asked mildly. Palpatine's yellow eyes narrowed. "The Sorcerer. I wondered when you'd show yourself. Tell me, Master Strange, do you truly believe your dimensional tricks can challenge the dark side of the Force? I am the Senate. I am the culmination of 1,000 years of Sith planning. What are you but an anomaly soon to be corrected? I'm the man who's seen your future," Strange said. He opened the eye of Agamotto, and the Time Stone's glow filled the chamber. "I've watched 14 million timelines where you execute Order 66, where you destroy the Jedi, where you rule as Emperor for decades. But I've also seen the timelines where you lose, where your empire crumbles, where Vader redeems himself and kills you. Would you like to see those futures, Darth Sidious? Would you like to witness your own failure?" "Lies," Palpatine said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Are they?" Strange gestured, and suddenly everyone in the room, Anakin, Obi-Wan, even Palpatine himself, was experiencing the vision. The Time Stone's power forced them to witness possible futures: the Empire's rise, Luke Skywalker's rebellion, the Death Star's destruction, Vader's redemption, Palpatine's death at the hands of his own apprentice. "No," Palpatine whispered, and for the first time, Strange saw genuine fear in the Sith Lord's eyes. "That future will not come to pass. I will not allow—" "You don't get to allow or prevent," Strange interrupted. "That's the difference between the Force and the Time Stone. The Force shows you destiny, fixed points you interpret as inevitable. The Time Stone shows me probability, possible outcomes that can be changed through choice. And right now, Palpatine, you're standing at the point where your probability of success drops from 97% to 3%. He snapped his fingers, and suddenly they weren't in the Senate building anymore. They stood in the mirror dimension, the same reality reflected and twisted, where Strange had absolute control over physical laws. "Welcome to my domain," Strange said. The architecture of the Senate began folding, walls becoming floors, gravity shifting in impossible directions. Here, the Force doesn't give you any advantage. You're powerful, yes, but power means nothing when reality itself doesn't follow the rules you understand. Palpatine unleashed Force lightning with apocalyptic intensity. Strange caught it on a shield of the Seraphim, the mystical barrier absorbing dark side energy and converting it to harmless light. Interesting, Strange observed clinically. Your lightning is essentially weaponized dark side corruption given physical form, powerful against Force users who have to defend with the Force. Useless against dimensional shields that operate on entirely different principles. He waved his hand, and the crimson bands of Kittorak materialized, eldritch bindings that wrapped around Palpatine, constricting, squeezing. The Sith Lord screamed in rage and pain, dark side energy exploding outward in a desperate attempt to break free. The crimson bands are forged in the crimson cosmos by Kittorak himself, Strange explained, as if lecturing a student. They've held gods, demons, and cosmic entities. Your dark side power, while impressive, isn't quite at that level. But Palpatine hadn't survived for decades through power alone. He'd survived through cunning. Through the dark side, he reached out, not to Strange, not to the mirror dimension, but to the galaxy beyond, to the clone armies scattered across worlds, to the chips implanted in their brains, to Order 66. Strange felt it through the time stone, the activation signal pulsing across the galaxy, Palpatine's last desperate gambit. If he couldn't escape, couldn't defeat Strange directly, he'd at least take the Jedi with him. "Nice try," Strange said. He gestured, and suddenly there were multiple versions of him. Not illusions, but actual temporal duplicates pulled from microseconds in the past and future. But I prepared for exactly this. One Strange maintained the crimson bands binding Palpatine. Another Strange opened a portal back to the Jedi Temple. A third Strange pulled Anakin and Obi-Wan through dimensional barriers back to safety. And the Prime Strange, the one actually experiencing this moment, focused on the wards he'd spent days preparing. Across Coruscant, in the Jedi Temple and surrounding districts, clone troopers felt the Order 66 directive activate. Their inhibitor chips tried to take control, tried to force them to execute their Jedi commanders. And every single chip encountered Strange's dimensional disruption field. The mystical ward didn't destroy the chips or hurt the clones. It simply prevented the chips from interfacing with the clones' neurological systems. The command tried to execute and failed. Tried again, failed again. The clones experienced a moment of confusion, a sense that something was wrong, something had tried to control them. And then clarity as their free will reasserted itself. In the temple, Commander Cody was training with Obi-Wan when the chip activated. He felt a moment of compulsion, a distant voice trying to tell him Obi-Wan was a traitor. Then Strange's magic kicked in, and the voice disappeared like a bad dream. "Sir," Cody said to Obi-Wan, his hand hovering over his blaster, "did you feel that? Like someone was trying to make me." "Order 66, Obi-Wan said grimly. "Dr. Strange's wards are working. The inhibitor chips can't control you." Across the temple, similar scenes played out. Clone troopers experienced the activation attempt, felt the magical disruption, and retained their autonomy. Within minutes, the entire clone force on Coruscant knew they'd been programmed to kill Jedi. Knew someone had tried to activate that programming, and knew they'd been saved by a sorcerer's magic. The revelation would have enormous political implications later, but for now, it meant one critical thing. The Jedi Order still stood, In the mirror dimension, Palpatine felt his final gambit fail. Felt Order 66 activate and accomplish nothing. Felt decades of planning crumble because one variable he hadn't anticipated, couldn't have anticipated, had appeared from another dimension entirely. "You've ruined everything," Palpatine said, and beneath the rage was something Strange had rarely heard from the Sith Lord. Despair. 1,000 years of Sith planning. Generations of manipulation. The Republic's corruption. The clone army's creation. Skywalker's seduction. All of it undone by you. An outsider who doesn't even belong in this reality. "Yes," Strange confirmed. "That's exactly what happened. And now you face a choice, Darth Sidious. You can continue fighting, continue trying to kill me or escape, and I'll be forced to end you permanently. Or you can surrender, face trial, let the galaxy see what you truly are." "You expect me to surrender?" Palpatine laughed bitterly. "To grovel before Jedi and politicians who are already corrupt? They created me, Sorcerer. The Republic's weakness, its decay, its inability to act decisively. That's what birthed the Sith's return. I'm not the disease. I'm the inevitable response to systemic failure." "Maybe," Strange acknowledged. "Or maybe you're just one more tyrant who convinced himself his evil served a greater good. I've met a dozen beings like you. Dormammu, Caecilius, even Thanos. They all believed they were saving the universe while actually destroying it. The rationalization doesn't matter. What matters is stopping you before you do more damage." He tightened the crimson bands, and Palpatine screamed. Dark side energy erupted in a final, desperate assault. Lightning, telekinetic force, even attempts at dark side corruption aimed at Strange's soul. Strange weathered it all behind mystical shields, his expression detached. He'd faced beings far more powerful than Palpatine, had bargained with Dormammu in an infinite time loop, had given up the Time Stone to Thanos to save Tony Stark's life, had spent 5 years dead, then returned to help save the universe. One Sith Lord, no matter how powerful, was manageable. "It's over, Palpatine," Strange said. "The question is how it ends. Surrender and face justice, or I trap you in the mirror dimension forever. Your choice. You have 10 seconds." Palpatine's response was to draw on reserves of dark side power Strange hadn't known existed. The Sith Lord's body began transforming, skin withering, eyes blazing with corrupted force energy, his physical form becoming a conduit for dark side power, so intense it warped the mirror dimension itself. "If I fall," Palpatine rasped, his voice inhuman now, "I take you with me. I take the Temple. I take Coruscant. The dark side will consume everything, rather than accept defeat." Strange felt the surge of dark side energy reaching critical mass. Palpatine was doing the equivalent of a dark side nuclear explosion, sacrificing himself to take out everything in the blast radius. In the normal world, it would destroy kilometers of Coruscant, kill millions, and potentially create a permanent dark side wound in the Force. In the mirror dimension, it could potentially shatter the dimensional barriers Strange was using to contain him, creating a catastrophic interdimensional breach. "Clever," Strange admitted. "Mutually assured destruction. Force me to release you, or risk collapsing dimensional boundaries." "Exactly," Palpatine said, his form stabilizing as the dark side power reached equilibrium. "Release me, Sorcerer. Let me escape, or we both die, along with everyone in the Temple." Strange considered for approximately 0.3 seconds. Then he smiled. Not a kind smile, but the smile of someone who'd played this game before, and won. "You're bluffing," Strange said, If you truly intended to detonate yourself, you'd have done it already instead of threatening. You're Palpatine, Darth Sidious, the Sith who survived through cunning and patience. You don't throw yourself away on mutual destruction when you could escape and rebuild. This is a negotiating tactic, and I don't negotiate. He opened the eye of Agamotto fully, and the Time Stone's power flooded the mirror dimension. Suddenly, time itself became Strange's weapon. He created a time loop, not around himself like with Dormammu, but around Palpatine specifically. The Sith Lord's dark side detonation began, reached critical mass, and then reset to the moment before it started. Again and again. An infinite loop of attempted destruction that never actually executed because time kept resetting. What have you done? Palpatine demanded, experiencing the loop from inside. Feeling himself try to detonate, fail, reset, try again, fail again, in an endless cycle. Trapped you in temporal stasis, Strange explained. Every time you attempt to release that dark side energy, time resets. You're caught in the moment before detonation, forever. Unable to attack, unable to escape, unable to do anything but experience your own failure on infinite repeat. It's called the temporal prison. The Ancient One used it on Caecilius and his zealots. I'm using it on you. No, Palpatine screamed. Release me. I am the Dark Lord of the Sith. I will not be contained by... His voice cut off as the time loop continued. From outside the loop, Strange could see Palpatine frozen in the moment, experiencing subjective eternity while objective time continued normally. That should hold him, Strange said, releasing the breath he'd been holding. The battle had lasted approximately 4 minutes by objective time. For Palpatine, trapped in the loop, it would feel like forever. He released the mirror dimension, and they snapped back to the Senate building. Anakin and Obi-Wan stared at the strange tableau, Palpatine frozen mid-scream, surrounded by golden light, his body flickering as the time loop held him. Is he dead? Anakin asked. No, Strange said, trapped in a temporal prison, experiencing the same moment infinitely. It's not death, it's something worse. An eternity of consciousness without action, awareness without change. The ultimate prison for someone who sought ultimate power. That's horrific, Obi-Wan said quietly. Yes, Strange agreed, but given the alternative, letting him detonate and kill millions, I'd say it's proportionate justice. The Jedi Council can decide later whether to make it permanent or find another solution. For now, the threat is contained. He pulled out a mystical artifact, a small crystalline structure that pulsed with temporal energy. With careful precision, Strange transferred Palpatine's temporal prison into the crystal, sealing it with additional wards. There, Strange said, handing the crystal to Mace Windu, who'd arrived with other council members. One Sith Lord, wrapped and delivered. He can't escape, can't influence anyone, can't do anything except exist. What you do with him now is your decision. Mace took the crystal with something approaching awe. You've accomplished in days what the Jedi Order failed to do in millennia. You've ended the Sith. I've ended one Sith, Strange corrected. There are still Dooku, Maul, possibly others scattered across the galaxy, but the head of the conspiracy is neutralized. The rest is cleanup. And the clones? Yoda asked, his ancient eyes reflecting deep concern. Order 66, activated it was. Feel it through the Force, I did. And my wards disrupted it, Strange confirmed. The clones on Coruscant retained their free will. The chips tried to activate and failed. But Masters... He looked at each council member. We need to address this immediately. The clones need to know they were programmed to kill you. The galaxy needs to know Palpatine orchestrated the entire war. Truth, transparency, and rapid action, or this crisis could still tear the Republic apart. He's right, Obi-Wan said. The political fallout will be enormous. The Senate, the clone army, the entire Republic power structure, all of it is built on Palpatine's corruption. Exposing him means exposing systemic failure on a scale the galaxy has never seen. Then expose it we must, Yoda said firmly. Truth, painful it may be, but necessary. Dr. Strange, saved the Jedi Order. You have. Saved the Republic, perhaps. Grateful, we are. But what now? What happens next? Strange looked at the crystalline prison containing Palpatine, at the Jedi Masters surrounding him, at Anakin, who looked shaken but intact, not fallen, still himself. Now, Strange said, you rebuild, better than before. The Jedi Order needs to examine why it didn't detect Palpatine's corruption. The Republic needs to reform its institutions, and the clones, he looked directly at Mace Windu, need to be given citizenship, autonomy, and the right to choose their own futures. They're not property. They're people who deserve freedom. Agreed, Mace said immediately. We'll bring legislation before the Senate, and Dr. Strange, you'll testify? Help us present evidence of Palpatine's conspiracy? Yes, Strange said, though I should warn you, I can't stay indefinitely. The Time Stone is needed in my reality. Other threats exist beyond your galaxy. Once the immediate crisis is resolved, I'll need to return home. Understand we do, Yoda said. But first, rest you need. Expended much power you have. Felt it through the Force, I did. Battle with Palpatine drained you. It has. Yoda was right. Strange could feel the exhaustion creeping in. The cost of using so much mystical power in such a short time. Fighting a Sith Lord in the mirror dimension, maintaining wards across Coruscant, creating a temporal prison, it had pushed even his considerable reserves to their limits. I'll rest, Strange agreed, but briefly. We've won the battle. Now we need to win the peace, and that's often harder than combat. As the Jedi Council dispersed to begin damage control and political maneuvering, Anakin approached Strange with an expression of profound gratitude, mixed with confusion. You saved me, Anakin said simply. From Palpatine, from myself, from the future you showed me. How can I ever? You can thank me by being better, Strange interrupted, by taking what I've taught you about the mystic arts and using it to help others, by staying true to the light, even when darkness seems easier, by being the father to Luke and Leia that Vader never could have been. That's thanks enough. Luke and Leia, Anakin repeated softly. My children, I'm going to meet them. Yes, Strange confirmed, and they're going to grow up with a father who chose light over darkness, who learned that love doesn't mean possession, and power doesn't mean control. That's the gift I've given you, Anakin. Not saving Padme, though we'll work on that, but showing you there was always another path. You just needed someone to illuminate it. The Jedi Council could never do that, Anakin said. They're too bound by tradition, by rules that don't account for reality. Then help them change, Strange suggested. You're young. You'll live another 50, 60 years at least. Use that time to reform the Order from within. Make it something that acknowledges emotion, attachment, love, but teaches how to handle those things responsibly rather than simply forbidding them. That's how you honor what I've done here, by ensuring the next generation of Jedi learns from the mistakes of this one. Anakin nodded slowly. I can do that. I will do that. For Luke, for Leia, for every Jedi who comes after me. Good, Strange said. Now go to Padme. Tell her everything. She deserves to know the truth." As Anakin left, Strange stood alone in the Senate building, looking out over Coruscant. The city planet glittered with 1,000,000,000,000 lights, each one representing lives he'd just saved by preventing Order 66, billions more across the galaxy who would now live free of Imperial tyranny. 14,605 possible futures, Strange said to himself, and I've just changed 427,000 of them. Not a bad day's work for a sorcerer from another dimension. The eye of Agamotto pulsed with gentle warmth, and Strange could feel the Time Stone's approval. The Infinity Stone, which had shown him all those terrible futures, seemed satisfied that he'd prevented at least some of them. But the work's not done yet, Strange continued. Palpatine's conspiracy ran deep. There will be holdouts, true believers, people who benefited from the corruption and won't give up without a fight. The next few weeks will be critical. He was right. But for now, for this moment, the Jedi Temple still stood. The younglings were safe. Anakin Skywalker hadn't fallen, and the Force itself, that cosmic entity Strange had come to grudgingly respect, felt clearer than it had in a generation. Balance, it seemed, required outside intervention sometimes, even if that intervention came from a dimension away. The political aftermath was, as Strange had predicted, catastrophic. Within hours of Palpatine's capture, the Senate descended into chaos. Senators who'd supported the Chancellor's emergency powers frantically distanced themselves. Others, who'd genuinely believed in his leadership, demanded proof that he was actually Darth Sidious. And a small but vocal faction insisted the entire thing was a Jedi coup designed to seize power. Dr. Strange stood before the assembled Senate, the crystalline temporal prison containing Palpatine floating beside him, and prepared to deliver testimony that would reshape galactic history. "Honored senators," Strange began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd argued before cosmic entities and won. "I am Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, Master of the Mystic Arts. I come from another dimension entirely, a fact I can prove through demonstration if necessary. 7 days ago, I detected a massive temporal distortion emanating from your galaxy, a corruption so profound it threatened multiversal stability. I investigated and discovered its source. Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord you knew as Chancellor Palpatine." Murmurs erupted throughout the chamber. Strange waited for them to subside before continuing. "I know this is difficult to accept. For 13 years, Palpatine served as your Chancellor. He appeared trustworthy, capable, dedicated to the Republic. But that appearance was a lie constructed through decades of dark side manipulation. Using powers you call the Force, he clouded the perception of even the Jedi Order, warriors specifically trained to detect dark side corruption. He orchestrated the entire Clone Wars, controlling both the Republic and the Separatists, engineering a conflict designed to destroy the Jedi and establish himself as Emperor." "Lies," Senator Orn Frita shouted from his pod. "Where is your evidence? Where are the records, the communications, the proof?" Strange gestured, and suddenly the entire Senate chamber was filled with holographic projections, images pulled directly from his mystical reconnaissance. Palpatine meeting with Count Dooku. Palpatine communicating with Separatist leadership. Palpatine in his true form, face twisted with dark side corruption, Force lightning crackling from his hands. "This is evidence," Strange said. "Mystically recorded observations that cannot be falsified. I witnessed these meetings through astral projection, a technique that allows my consciousness to observe events without physical presence. Additionally, he gestured again, and new images appeared. I can provide testimony from Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, both of whom witnessed Palpatine's transformation firsthand. They saw him use Force lightning, heard him admit to being Darth Sidious, fought against his dark side powers. The word of 2 Jedi against our Chancellor? Another senator challenged. How convenient. Then let me provide additional evidence, Strange said. He waved his hand, and suddenly, every senator in the chamber felt it. A mystical compulsion that stripped away self-deception and forced absolute honesty. For the next 60 seconds, none of you can lie. You will speak only truth. Now, he pointed at Senator Ta. Did you ever suspect Chancellor Palpatine was accumulating too much power? Did you ever question why emergency powers granted 13 years ago were never rescinded? Ta's mouth opened, and despite his obvious desire to deny, truth poured out. Yes, I suspected, but he offered Ryloth protection, offered me influence. I ignored my suspicions because they served my interests. Strange turned to another senator. And you? Did you question the war's convenient timing? The way peace negotiations always failed at politically advantageous moments? I questioned, the senator admitted, compelled by Strange's spell. But I was afraid of what it meant if our leadership was corrupt. Easier to believe the lies than face the truth. One by one, Strange forced senators to confront their complicity, not because they were evil, most weren't, but because they'd been comfortable, because questioning authority was harder than accepting it, because Palpatine had given them exactly what they wanted while slowly poisoning the Republic from within. When the 60 seconds ended and the compulsion lifted, the Senate chamber was silent. Senators stared at each other, at themselves, forced to acknowledge their own failures. This is what Palpatine exploited, Strange said more gently now. Human nature, the desire for security over freedom, the temptation to let someone else make hard decisions, the comfort of not looking too closely at convenient answers. He didn't conquer you through force. He conquered you through your own willingness to be conquered. Then what do we do? Mon Mothma asked, her voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who'd fought Palpatine's influence for years. If the entire Republic structure is compromised, if our institutions are corrupted, how do we rebuild? Carefully, Strange said, transparently and quickly. First, he held up the temporal prison. We decide Palpatine's fate. He's currently trapped in a moment of eternal stasis, experiencing infinite time, while zero time passes externally. It's a mystical punishment I can maintain indefinitely. But the question is, what does galactic law demand? Trial, Bail Organa said immediately. He's entitled to trial, even for crimes of this magnitude. Anything less makes us tyrants. How do you try someone trapped in temporal stasis? Another senator asked. He can't speak, can't defend himself, can't interact with reality. I can temporarily release him, Strange said, under controlled conditions with sufficient mystical restraints. He could testify, face his accusers, present whatever defense he chooses, then return to stasis until sentencing. And if he's found guilty? Someone asked. Then you decide his sentence, Strange said. Permanent temporal stasis, imprisonment in a location where dark side powers are useless, or... He paused, knowing this suggestion would be controversial. Execution. I don't recommend that last option, but it's legally available under Republic law for treason of this magnitude. The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Senators argued about due process, justice versus revenge, the precedent they were setting. Strange observed with the detachment of someone who'd seen civilizations rise and fall across multiple dimensions. These beings were trying to save their democracy while punishing the man who'd corrupted it. There were no easy answers. Finally, Bail Organa proposed a solution. Let him stand trial. Full proceedings, transparent to the public, with representation if he wants it. If found guilty, and I have no doubt he will be. He remains in Doctor Strange's temporal prison until such time as we've established secure, long-term containment. The Sith Lord gets justice. The Republic gets to demonstrate we still follow rule of law. The vote was overwhelming. Palpatine would face trial. The trial itself was unprecedented in galactic history. Palpatine, temporarily released from temporal stasis under layers of mystical restraints, sat in the defendant's dock, looking simultaneously ancient and powerful. His yellowed eyes tracked everything, calculating even now, looking for any exploitable weakness. Darth Sidious, the presiding judge said, a Syrian with the kind of deliberate patience that came from living 3 centuries. You stand accused of treason, mass murder, conspiracy to commit genocide, illegal creation of a slave army, and approximately 3,000 additional charges. How do you plead? Palpatine smiled, showing teeth. I plead practical. Everything I did for the Republic's survival. You were weak, corrupt, stagnant. I made you strong. By orchestrating a war that killed billions, the prosecutor demanded. By forcing evolution, Palpatine countered. The Republic was dying, had been dying for centuries. I simply accelerated the process and prepared to rebuild from the ashes. You call it evil. I call it necessary surgery, cutting away the diseased tissue so the body can heal. Is that how you justify the murder of children? Mace Windu asked from the witness stand, by calling them diseased tissue. The Jedi Order was a relic, Palpatine said coldly, a dogmatic institution that had outlived its purpose. Yes, I planned its destruction, and yes, that included the younglings. Sentiment doesn't change necessity. The testimony continued for days. Strange watched from the observer's gallery, his mystical senses monitoring Palpatine for any attempt at escape or dark side manipulation. The Sith Lord tried several times. Subtle force persuasions, attempts to corrupt witnesses, even one desperate grab for dark side power that Strange blocked instantly. You're persistent, Strange said during one recess, standing guard over Palpatine in the holding area. Even now, trapped and on trial, you're still trying to manipulate events. Because that's what power means, Palpatine said, never accepting defeat, never surrendering, always seeking the advantage, no matter how small. You've won this battle, Sorcerer, but the war isn't over. The dark side will return. It always does. Perhaps not through me, but through someone. The galaxy requires darkness to function. Without it, you'll stagnate, just as the old Republic did. Maybe, Strange acknowledged, or maybe you're just rationalizing your own evil, because accepting that you're simply a tyrant is too painful. I've met beings like you before, Palpatine. Thanos believed he was saving the universe through genocide. Dormammu thought he was offering eternal life through dimensional conquest. They were all convinced their evil served a greater good. They were all wrong. Time will tell, Palpatine said, and you won't be here to see it, will you, Doctor Strange? You said yourself, you must return to your dimension. Your own reality needs its Sorcerer Supreme. So you'll leave, and when you're gone, who will stop the next Sith? The next dark side user? The Jedi couldn't stop me. What makes you think they'll stop my successors? Because I'm not leaving them helpless, Strange said. I'm leaving them knowledge, tools, understanding of powers beyond the Force. And most importantly, I'm leaving them Anakin Skywalker, a Jedi who's seen both paths and chose light. He'll be their conscience, their bridge between old dogma and new wisdom. Skywalker, Palpatine said with bitter amusement. The chosen one who was supposed to bring balance to the Force. I suppose he did, just not the way anyone expected. Tell me, Sorcerer, do you truly believe he won't fall? That he's strong enough to resist the darkness forever? I believe he's been given the choice, Strange said, and he's made it. What happens after that is up to him. That's called free will, Palpatine. You should try it sometime, instead of manipulating everyone around you. The trial concluded with the inevitable guilty verdict on all charges. The sentencing, however, sparked new debate. Execution was proposed and rejected. Making Palpatine a martyr served no purpose. Permanent imprisonment required facilities that didn't exist yet. Political exile was impossible for someone with his dark side powers. Finally, Strange proposed an alternative. The mirror dimension. I can trap him there permanently, in a pocket reality, where his dark side powers are useless. He'll exist, conscious and aware, but unable to interact with or influence your reality. It's imprisonment, without the need for physical facilities, guards, or resources. And if you ever decide you need to access him, for testimony, information, whatever, I can leave instructions for how other mystics might briefly contact him. Other mystics? Yoda asked. Trained in your arts, who will be? I'm working on that, Strange said. Before I leave, I intend to establish the foundation for mystical training in your galaxy. Not everyone can use the Force, but many beings have latent aptitude for the mystic arts. They deserve the chance to develop those abilities. And your galaxy deserves defenders who can combat threats the Force can't address. The Senate voted to accept Strange's proposal. Palpatine was sentenced to permanent imprisonment in the mirror dimension, with annual reviews to assess whether circumstances warranted alternative arrangements. As Strange prepared to transfer Palpatine to his eternal prison, the Sith Lord had final words. You think you've saved them, Palpatine said quietly, but all you've done is delay the inevitable. The dark side is eternal. The Sith will return, and when they do, there will be no interdimensional sorcerer to stop them. Your intervention was an anomaly, a cosmic accident that won't repeat itself. Eventually, the galaxy will learn that darkness always wins. Always. Maybe, Strange said, or maybe by the time the next threat rises, this galaxy will have learned to save itself. That's what growth means, Palpatine. Becoming strong enough that you don't need saving. These people have potential you never saw because you were too busy exploiting them. Let's see what they become when they're free to develop that potential. He activated the spell, and Palpatine vanished, pulled into the mirror dimension, into a specially constructed pocket reality where he'd spend eternity as a conscious prisoner, unable to affect or interact with the galaxy he'd tried to conquer. It is done, Strange said to the assembled witnesses. Darth Sidious is contained. The immediate threat is over. But the work is not, Bail Organa said. We have a republic to rebuild, institutions to reform, trust to restore. Dr. Strange, you've given us a chance. Now we must prove worthy of it. The final weeks of Strange's stay in the Star Wars galaxy were spent in rapid preparation for his departure. He worked simultaneously on multiple projects, his enhanced focus allowing him to multitask in ways that astounded even Jedi Masters. First, the clone situation. With the inhibitor chips exposed and deactivated across the galaxy, the Grand Army faced an identity crisis. They'd been created as slaves, programmed to fight and die without question. Now they were free, but free to do what? Where did an army of millions go when the war ended? Strange worked with Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, and surprisingly Padme Amidala to draft the Clone Rights Act, legislation granting citizenship, autonomy, and resources for clones to pursue whatever futures they chose. Some would remain soldiers, others would become farmers, artisans, scholars. The galaxy owed them that choice. "This is remarkable work," Padme said during one late-night drafting session. She was visibly pregnant now, her twins growing, steadily under Strange's mystical monitoring. "You've been here less than a month, yet you've reshaped our entire political landscape. I've just pointed out things you should have seen yourselves," Strange said. "The clones' rights, Palpatine's corruption, the Jedi Order's blind spots. None of this was hidden. It just required someone willing to look honestly and act decisively. Anakin speaks highly of you," Padme said carefully. "Says you've taught him things the Jedi Order never could. He's different now, calmer, more centered. What did you show him?" "Alternative paths," Strange said. "The Jedi teach that attachment leads to suffering, so they forbid it. I taught Anakin that attachment is neutral. It's what you do with it that matters. Love can strengthen or weaken you, depending on whether you approach it with wisdom or possessiveness. He's learning the difference." "And the healing magic?" Padme asked quietly. "He says you're teaching him to save me, from the visions he's been having." Strange looked at Padme with his enhanced perception, seeing through mystical senses the life growing within her. The slight stress on her cardiovascular system, the potential complications that might arise during birth. The visions were never about natural causes, Strange said gently. They were warnings about what would happen if Anakin fell to the dark side. His fall would have broken your heart, quite literally, but he didn't fall. So the visions won't come to pass. That said, he gestured and golden light surrounded Padme's midsection. "I've placed protective wards on you and the twins. If any complications arise during birth, the magic will stabilize you long enough for medical intervention. Think of it as mystical insurance." "Thank you," Padme whispered, "for saving my husband, for protecting my children, for giving us a future we almost lost." "Thank Anakin," Strange said. "He's the one who made the choice to accept help instead of seeking easy power. I just provided options. He did the hard work of choosing wisely. Second, establishing the mystical arts in this galaxy. Strange couldn't train an entire order of sorcerers in a few weeks, but he could lay the groundwork. He selected 7 individuals from across the galaxy, beings who showed latent aptitude for dimensional magic, but lacked force sensitivity. A Twi'lek mathematician, a Syrian scientist, a human engineer from Corellia, a Zabrak philosopher, a Mon Calamari artist, a Wookiee who'd studied ancient texts, and surprisingly, Rey, the scavenger who'd helped establish contact with Luke Skywalker, who showed remarkable aptitude for both force and mysticism. "You're beginning something unprecedented," Rey said during one training session. Strange had brought all 7 students to a secured location where he could teach without interruption. A new order of magic users who don't rely on the Force. "Not a new order," Strange corrected. "A first order. The mystic arts have existed in my dimension for millennia. Here, you're pioneers. You'll face skepticism, fear, maybe even hostility, but you'll also be able to help beings the Jedi can't reach. Non-Force sensitives who have mystical potential deserve training just as much as Force sensitives do." He taught them the basics over 3 intensive weeks: meditation techniques, energy manipulation, simple spells, and most importantly, the ethical framework that governed the mystic arts. Power without responsibility is tyranny. Strange emphasized repeatedly, you're not being trained to dominate or control. You're being trained to protect reality itself from supernatural threats. That's what the Sorcerer Supreme does. That's what you'll eventually do for your galaxy. Third, reforming the Jedi Order. This was the most delicate task, requiring Strange to challenge millennia of tradition while respecting the genuine wisdom the Jedi had accumulated. Your fundamental problem, Strange told the assembled council in a closed session, is that you've confused emotional suppression with emotional mastery. The Jedi Code teaches you to avoid attachment, passion, emotion, but you're biological beings. You have emotions whether you acknowledge them or not. Suppressing them doesn't eliminate them. It just drives them underground where they fester and explode. You suggest we abandon the code? Ki-Adi-Mundi asked, with barely concealed hostility. I suggest you update it, Strange said. Acknowledge emotion. Teach healthy ways to process it. Allow attachment while training Jedi to maintain perspective. Love doesn't have to lead to possessiveness. Passion doesn't have to lead to destructive rage. You just need to teach the difference. Centuries of wisdom you would discard, Yoda challenged, but his tone was curious rather than defensive. I'd build on it, Strange said. The Jedi Order has genuine wisdom about compassion, service, sacrifice, but that wisdom is packaged in restrictions that don't account for reality. Anakin Skywalker isn't weak because he loves Padme. He's strong because he learned to love without possessing. That's the evolution your order needs. Acknowledge human nature and work with it, rather than fighting it. The debate continued for days. Not all council members agreed. Some insisted the old ways were proven and should remain unchanged. But Yoda, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, and others who'd witnessed how close they'd come to extinction proved receptive. A new path we will explore, Yoda said finally. Not abandon the old ways entirely, but adapt them, evolve, as all living things must, if survive they wish to. That's all I ask, Strange said. Give future Jedi the tools to handle emotion, attachment, and passion wisely. Don't just forbid these things and hope obedience holds. It doesn't. It didn't with Anakin in 14 million timelines. It won't with future students unless you change your approach. On his final night in the galaxy, Strange stood on the Jedi Temple's highest platform, looking out over Coruscant. The city planet glittered with renewed hope. The Senate was reforming, the clones were being granted rights, the Jedi were beginning their institutional evolution. It wasn't perfect. Problems remained. But it was better than 14 million timelines where everything burned. Anakin found him there, standing beside the man who'd saved him from darkness. You're leaving tomorrow, Anakin said. Not a question. Yes, Strange confirmed. The Time Stone is needed in my reality, and honestly, I've done what I came to do. Palpatine is contained. Order 66 is prevented. Your fall is averted. The rest is up to you. How do you do it? Anakin asked. Carry the weight of knowing the future, seeing all those timelines, all those possible disasters. How do you stay sane? Meditation helps, Strange said with slight humor. Then more seriously, I remind myself that the future isn't fixed. Every choice changes probability. Yes, I've seen terrible things, but I've also seen beautiful things. Futures where you're a great Jedi Master training your children, where Rey becomes Sorcerer Supreme of this galaxy, where the Republic evolves into something genuinely just. Those futures are possible now because we made them possible. That's how I stay sane, by knowing the work matters. My children, Anakin said softly. Luke and Leia. You've seen them in the futures. What are they like? Remarkable, Strange said honestly. Strong, brave, compassionate. Luke has your best qualities without your darkness. Leia has Padme's political brilliance and your tactical skill. They're going to change the galaxy, Anakin, but only if you're there to raise them right. To teach them that power serves compassion, not the other way around. I will be, Anakin promised. Everything you've taught me, about choice, about responsibility, about love without possession, I'll teach them. I'll make sure they grow up better than I did. That's all any father can do, Strange said. Be better than your own upbringing. Break the cycle of damage. Create something new. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Two powerful beings who'd come from different realities but found common purpose. Thank you, Anakin said finally. I know I've said it before, but thank you for seeing me at my worst possible future and still believing I could be better, for not giving up on me when everyone else had, for showing me there was always another path. You walked it yourself, Strange said. I just illuminated it. The choice was always yours. The next morning, Strange prepared his departure in the Jedi Council chambers. All the masters were present, along with Anakin, Padme, the 7 mystical arts students, various senators, and clone commanders. Before I leave, Strange said, I want to address something important. I've changed your timeline dramatically. Palpatine imprisoned. Order 66 prevented. Anakin saved. The butterfly. Effects from these changes will ripple across decades, maybe centuries. You're now on a path radically different from the one you were on. That's good. The original path led to catastrophe. But it also means uncertainty, problems I didn't foresee, challenges you'll face without interdimensional guidance. You're saying we're on our own. Mace Windu said, I'm saying you're free. Strange corrected. Free to succeed or fail based on your own choices. That's the gift I'm leaving you. Genuine agency. The Force still exists, still guides you, but it's no longer being corrupted by Sith manipulation. What you do with that freedom is up to you. He pulled out an artifact, a small, intricately carved stone that pulsed with mystical energy. This is a dimensional anchor. If you ever face a threat so catastrophic you need outside help, and I mean genuinely universe-ending, not just politically difficult, you can activate this. It will send a signal across dimensional barriers to the Sanctum Sanctorum on Earth. Someone will investigate. Might be me, might be my successor, but someone will come. Use it wisely. Use it only when absolutely necessary. He handed the anchor to Yoda, who accepted it with reverent care. A gift this is, and a burden. Hope, I do, that never use it. We must. So do I, Strange agreed. He opened the eye of Agamotto one final time, letting the Time Stone's power fill the chamber. Golden light blazed as Strange wove the spell that would return him to his own reality. One last thing, Strange said. I've seen futures where this galaxy thrives, where the Jedi Order becomes something beautiful, where the Republic evolves into genuine democracy, where even the Force itself achieves balance in ways it never has before. Those futures are possible now. Make them real. Prove that my intervention mattered. Prove that when given the chance, sapient beings choose compassion over cruelty. That's how you thank me, by being better. The portal opened, a swirling vortex of golden light leading back across dimensions. Strange stepped toward it, the cloak of levitation billowing dramatically. "Wait," Anakin called. "Will we ever see you again?" Strange paused at the portal's edge, looking back at the galaxy he'd saved. At Anakin, who'd almost become Vader, but instead would become something better. At Padme, who'd lived to raise her children. At the Jedi Masters who'd survived extinction. At the 7 mystical students who'd carry on his teachings. At a galaxy that now had genuine hope. "In my experience," Strange said, "the multiverse has a way of bringing people together when they're needed. So maybe, if your galaxy ever faces another Palpatine, another Sith conspiracy, another existential threat, maybe I'll sense it through dimensional barriers. Maybe I'll return, but I hope I don't have to. I hope you prove you've learned to save yourselves." "May the Force be with you, Dr. Strange," Yoda said. "And may magic serve your reality well," Strange replied. Then with his characteristic dry humor, "Try not to break it while I'm gone." He stepped through the portal and vanished, the golden light collapsing behind him. The Jedi Council chamber fell silent, everyone processing what had just happened. An interdimensional sorcerer had arrived, prevented apocalypse, and departed, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed. "So," Mace Windu said finally, "we have a lot of work to do." "Yes," Yoda agreed, "but possible it is now. Because of him. Because he showed us another way. Grateful we are, and better we must be." Anakin stood looking at the spot where the portal had been, his hand unconsciously going to his lightsaber. Strange had taught him that the weapon didn't make the Jedi, the choices did. That power served compassion, not the other way around. That love without possession was strength, not weakness. "I won't waste this," Anakin whispered. "I won't waste the second chance he gave me." Padme took his hand. "We won't waste it, together." And across the galaxy, in 1,000 locations, beings who'd been saved by Dr. Strange's intervention went about their lives. Clone troopers choosing their own futures. Jedi younglings who'd never face Order 66. Politicians working to reform corrupt institutions. Mystic art students learning to defend reality through magic. All because one sorcerer from another dimension had refused to accept that destiny was fixed. Had believed that even 14 million terrible futures could be changed through knowledge, courage, and the willingness to act. Had proven that magic, properly applied, could save the universe, even one that wasn't his own. Epilogue. 20 years later, Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker stood in the reformed Jedi Temple's Hall of Heroes, looking at the statue that had been erected shortly after Dr. Strange's departure. The sculptor had captured him perfectly. Serious expression, the cloak of levitation frozen mid-billow, hands positioned as if casting a spell, and the eye of Agamotto prominent on his chest. The plaque read, "Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, Savior of the Jedi Order." He came from beyond reality itself and showed us that destiny could be changed through choice, courage, and compassion. May we honor his sacrifice by being worthy of the galaxy he saved. "Father?" a voice asked. Luke Skywalker, 19 years old, studying to become a Jedi Knight, approached with curiosity. "You come here often, to this statue." "Why?" "Because I need to remember," Anakin said quietly. "In another timeline, in 14 million timelines, I fell to the dark side, became Darth Vader, destroyed everything I loved. The only reason I didn't was because one man from another dimension believed I could be better. Believed it strongly enough to risk everything teaching me another path." "The mystic arts," Luke said. He wore 2 pendants, one bearing the Jedi symbol, The other bearing the symbol of the mystical order Strange had founded. We still practice them. Rey is Sorcerer Supreme now. She says Dr. Strange would be proud of what we've built. I hope so, Anakin said. I hope he knows that his sacrifice mattered, that we didn't waste the chance he gave us. A commotion from the temple entrance drew their attention. Anakin and Luke rushed to investigate and found the dimensional anchor, dormant for 20 years, suddenly blazing with golden light. "What's happening?" Luke asked. "I don't know," Anakin admitted. "The anchor has never activated before." The light intensified, and suddenly a familiar portal of golden energy opened. Through it stepped an older Dr. Strange, his temples gray but his eyes still sharp, followed by a younger man in a red and blue suit who moved with impossible agility. "Sorry to drop in unannounced," Strange said with his characteristic dry humor, "but we detected a multiversal incursion event centered on your galaxy. Something from the dark dimension is trying to breach your reality. Thought you might appreciate some assistance." "Dr. Strange," Anakin said, feeling joy and relief in equal measure. "You came back." "I said I might if you needed me," Strange replied. "And apparently, you do. This is Spider-Man, by the way. Peter Parker. He's helping me investigate dimensional breaches. Peter, meet Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi who didn't fall to the dark side." "Didn't fall?" the young man in the spider suit asked. "Was that an option? That seems like a really bad option." "Long story," Anakin said with a smile. "But thanks to Dr. Strange, I chose differently. Welcome to our galaxy, Spider-Man. I hope you're ready for another adventure." "Always," Peter said enthusiastically. "Friendly neighborhood interdimensional Spider-Man, reporting for duty." Strange looked around the temple, seeing the changes 20 years had wrought. The statue of himself, which made him slightly uncomfortable. The mystical wards now woven into the architecture. The students practicing both Jedi and mystical arts in harmony. "You've done well," Strange said to Anakin. "Better than I hoped. The galaxy I saved has become a galaxy that can save itself." "Thanks to you," Anakin said. "Thanks to choice," Strange corrected. "Now shall we deal with this dimensional incursion? I have a feeling it's going to be interesting. Dark dimension entities usually are." As they moved to address the new threat, Strange couldn't help but smile. He'd saved this galaxy once. Now they were fighting alongside him as equals, partners in defending reality itself. That was the best possible outcome. That was what heroes did. They inspired others to become heroes too. And somewhere, across dimensional barriers, the Force and the mystic arts aligned in perfect harmony. Balance, it seemed, came in many forms, some of them even from other dimensions entirely.